G'day guys, and welcome to another YouTube lesson. Today we're taking a look at the types of markets. Now there's two sort of sections to this, although the syllabus doesn't really show it. But be aware that there are two distinct sections where we look at types of markets. You've got the resources, the industrial, the intermediate and the consumer markets. That's one type of market. And then you take a look at mass versus niche markets, and that's the other type. So firstly, this all comes under the heading of the role of marketing. I really want to emphasize that marketing is not just about selling crap, it's also about a whole range of other things. That's one small aspect of it. So marketing is the process of developing a product and implementing a series of strategies aimed at correctly promoting, pricing, and distributing the product to a core group of customers. It's a very good textbook definition to remember. And again, understand you're talking about the 7 Ps, talking about global marketing. All right, you're not just talking about the actual promotion of the product. That's one small part of those 7 Ps, 1/7 of it, if you will. Now, the types of markets. So we said we've got the resource, the industrial, the intermediate, the consumer market. They're the key ones I want to look at to start with because they're all relevant with each other. The mass versus the consumer market, the mass versus the niche market, they're another part of type of markets. Let's not confuse the two issues. Resource markets, what are these? They are those markets where the production and sale of raw materials occur. Now, some businesses require materials such as gold, aluminium, sugar or wheat to produce the goods and services that they then sell to other businesses. Later on, I'll give you a bit of an example about some of these particular markets. And I want you to think about the industry sector and these markets. These markets are marketplaces. They're not industry sectors. They're between the industry sectors. So you've got the primary industry. It's farmers, miners. And you've got the secondary industry sector. That's the manufacturing industry sector. There's a marketplace where the minerals that are dug up, the metals, are sold to the secondary sector, the manufacturing sector. So it's in between these sectors. Kids often think that they are one and the same, but markets talk about marketplaces where the transactions occur. So resource markets are where these minerals are sold from the primary sector to the manufacturing, the secondary sector. All right, the industrial markets. These are where goods that are used as supplies in the production process are traded. Some examples include steel manufacturing businesses and factories. They purchase from the resource market, turn the product into something, car, steel beam, and then they sell it. Now, it can be a finished product like a car or a microchip to be used in another product, a semi-finished component. Intermediate, what's that? Wholesalers. Intermediate equals wholesalers. But for most of you guys, you don't quite know what that is. So I will explain. These are businesses that purchase the completed product from the industrial market and then sell it to the consumer market, not directly to the consumer. An example of this, of an intermediate market or a wholesaler, would be Australian Wholesale Clothing, who buy from the industrial market and sell to the retail consumer market. So JB Hi-Fi is not a wholesaler. They sell to you, the consumer. That's the consumer market. Right, a wholesaler buys a completed product and they then sell that product that's completed to various retail outlets who then on-sell to you, the customer. All right, so most people don't know a lot about wholesalers because unless you're a business, you probably shouldn't. You don't buy from them. Consumer market. Another name for that is the retail market. This is where goods are finally sold directly to the customer. Example of this, as I mentioned earlier, JB Hi-Fi, Telstra, they purchase from the wholesaler, which is that intermediate market, okay, and then they sell it to you, the customer. All right, now, In terms of this timeline or how this works with the different markets, I need you to understand that we're not talking about industry sectors, we're talking about in between those industry sectors. So I'm going to give you some examples before I move on to the last two, that mass and the niche markets. So you have the primary sector, a farmer. The example we're going to give here is wheat for this, but the farmer is the primary sector. They make the wheat. They create or they mine the raw material if they're a mining company. That's not the resource market. You have the wheat. Now, the secondary sector could be a miller. What's a miller? They use the wheat to make flour. Yeah. So where we are selling the wheat, that raw material between the primary sector and the secondary sector, in this instance, which is a miller, okay, that is the resource market. So when the primary sector sells to the secondary sector, in between is the resource market. Now, that's a semi-finished product because wheat has been turned into flour by a miller. Yeah, they've created a non-complete item. Okay, it's one that will be used because you don't just eat flour. It will be one that will be used to make something else. So this industrial market, the industrial market is where you're selling a semi-finished product in the secondary sector to another secondary sector, a manufacturing business. Okay, this manufacturing business could be a non-retail bakery like Tip Top. So Tip Top will buy, Tip Top, a manufacturer, will buy flour from a miller. Yeah, where they're buying that is the industrial market. The industrial market, definition again, is the sale of semi-finished products. So remember, the industrial market is when a secondary sector sells a semi-finished product like flour to another secondary market, another secondary industry, such as Tip Top in this instance. Now, in terms of an intermediate market, this is the sale of a finished product, but it can't be sold directly to a business. So in terms of wholesalers, an intermediate market, they're there where they purchase a finalized finished product like bread, but they, for an intermediate market to be there, they don't directly sell to the customer. Where is this market? Well, you have the tertiary sector and the secondary sector. When you have Tip Top, they made the bread. When they, as a secondary sector or industry, sell the finished bread to the tertiary sector, like Woolworths, that marketplace where that's sold in between the two is called the intermediate market. Now, the consumer market is the final one. It's when the product is sold to the customer. It's called the consumer market and also known as the retail market that's there. Now, this is a little confusing, but I want you to have in your mind that we talk about the markets, we're talking about marketplaces where stuff is being sold. They're between industry sectors. And if you're not sure, go and see your teacher to seek clarification. Now, separate to this, we've got two other marketplaces. It's totally sort of different. You've got the mass market and the niche market. The mass market is where products are aimed at all consumers, irrespective of their age, their gender, or their location or income. The business does not target one particular market segment. So you think of a pie chart, pie graph, it's the whole thing. Whereas if you're targeting part of that based on age or gender or whatever, that's a market segment. Now, a niche market is a very thin slither, a very small market segment. Okay, so a niche market is a small section of the total mass market, a very thin market segment. Now, business targeting a niche market would still focus on a select group of customers. A niche market differs from other market segments because it's very thin. Look, Arabic radio, the mass market would be radio stations. So Arabic or Vietnamese speaking radio stations would be a good example of a niche market because it's not sold en masse, or it's not a large market segment. It's a very small market in Australia that we would be selling to. All right, guys, thanks for listening and see you next time.